Who was Maria Orsic?
Well, there are numerous individuals who were conducting seances or channelings or whatever you're terming such a similar fashion we are speaking to the vessel right now, correct?
Uh-huh.
Who, from our experience and awareness, inspired the vessel first and foremost to learn about this particular phenomena long before they was aware of our existence in the first place, or our sense in that direction that made this interaction possible. Or obviously, our rituals doing this long before those particular females, approximately a century ago in their own counting, when they started with those ideas. However, much mythology has been constructed around this later on. We're aware some of this led the vessels in the correct direction, so we're going to criticize therefore. However, historically speaking, there are numerous interpretations of this particular circle. They are never considered called the Vril maidens, whatever. That's a term that was later made up after your so-called Second World War, when there is much mythology about whatever happened before. In reality, those were simply numerous females, particularly from the region you today consider Croatia or Austria, this region in Bavaria, and therefore those beings coming together to form perhaps like a coven or but mainly just individuals coming together and performing what has already been performed in those particular regions, particularly in numerous Germanic countries, the Anglosphere and the Germanosphere, over approximately half a century before that. Now, those beings are due to their awareness of the certain research, which was, however, also theorized by numerous Englishmen about the interior of your planet, correct? Your whole idea of being a hollow planet, which, as you're aware, is quite correct, that there is something to it, and curiosity about internal visitors from inside your own planet, they became their idea that perhaps not just contacting people that are dead or ascended masters or whatever, but beings that are quite physically, but just not on present on planet Earth. From what we're aware, they were the first ones to come up with their idea that this was possible, so therefore they could reach out to beings that actually were just as physical but not living on the surface of Earth, right? Now, during that process, they also became aware of their life on the Earth, and they particularly got interested in one particular star system, Aldebaran. Now, it's not like this system is more populated than others, it's just that there were already visitors from the system on your planet in your so-called ancient past, also related to what you just referred to, Babylon, or rather the original civilization of Sumer, and from there on out, there was some influence on different other cultures, which later made their way to Europe, through the half crescent moon, there that you're considering, right? And therefore, the individuals became more interested in this particular heritage, this particular system, just as you're aware, Sirius, Pleiades, or Orion, and of course also the Draconian system have been mentioned numerous times in the records due to visitors from those systems, and for some reason those individuals were in the Vril were interested in particular civilization on there. Or again, they did not use a particular label. We're not aware if they used any label at all. They have just later been labeled something because they were interested in the Bulwer's person idea of an internal civilization considering using the power of Vril, and therefore they wanted to have a somewhat of an awareness of that power, right? Which is very similar simply what today you call chi or prana, depends on other cultures you're referring to. We believe that the term came from the Babylonian culture, but we are entirely certain. One thing is for certain, they got it from the Bulwer person, again, English person, and obviously later their achievements were used for the war effort once they were somewhat hijacked by the more military aligned SS and their Black Sun operations, etc. And they were somewhat more put to work there, just like the other groups for their own purposes, or they originally simply had an interest in communicating with beings inside your own planet, right? Also, their were more inclined towards the feminine beings, number of females, part of this whatever coven were, but when they were integrated later, there was obviously much more stronger masculine presence due to the military oversight of the whole interaction. Now, the Orsic person that you originally asked about was simply one of those, and same as with the Jesus person that you asked about numerous times now. There are several individuals who are today known as Orsic, or some of their achievements are all attributed to the one person. Obviously, whereas in the vessels might be where this one other person concerned Sigrun, and there are numerous pictures of both of the individuals, or many of them are just drawings that are based on photographs, so they are obviously idealized, right? And obviously their characters are not that well known to anybody, really. Just their achievement in terms of the communication process, through which we are currently communicating with the other planet. However, we can verify as an individual existed and was very advanced in terms of her abilities to do what the vessel is doing in this very second. Now, we're certain about her whereabouts, that's what you're wondering. It's likely that she's still on Earth. We're also aware of the theory that she actually left planet Earth and traveled to the Aldebaran system. We cannot vouch for the validity of that claim. It certainly was possible as the technology that they had developed in this particular time frame. So it's possible itself that they escaped, but it's more likely they escaped to other planets of the planet and not necessarily all the way to the Aldebaran star system.
Okay, so are you saying she's probably inside the Earth somewhere?
We're not saying anything particular. We are hinting at the fact that this reason which she was still alive was she probably would be somewhere in Antarctica or another distant location outside of Europe. However, she could still also be in Europe or actually died there wherever she escaped.
Okay.
We do not see the validity of the claim that she traveled to other continents and worked with other military projects afterwards. More likely she went underground, but again, it's not certain if she literally went underground or simply traveled to another location like Antarctica, for example, and died there later on, or survived there, or whatever. And again, there were numerous individuals, as we shared, to whom they attribute that they committed certain acts were later attributed to the Orsic person. Also, not curiosity. There's also the saying that they meditated over an apple, right? They cut an apple in half, and then they meditated on this particular site, which caused a great curiosity to people in this field back then, right? And a lot of confusion why apparently spiritually oriented group would meditate of all things about a half-split apple, right?
Right.
We're also aware there's some confusion after a war about the speculation. What a weird concept who comes up with that? Well, those group were simply aware of the torus nature, right? The torus field of planet Earth and planetary bodies in general. And what does a cut in two half apple look like? A torus field, yes?
Okay.
So this was simply a symbol before you have something like, well, more sophisticated technological simulation of what a torus field looks like. One ritual to remember, these groups were not necessarily interacting with the government originally, again, a century ago, right? With no structure and whatsoever. They were just a group of women meeting in a certain bar location, wherever. So therefore they had to use their own means, and one of those was meditating over a cut in half apple. Which obviously would be a possibility to tune to a certain frequency. You could set a Vril, prana, chi, whatever. Just a tool, but certainly an efficient one. One more point. There was also the idea of certain members that were either politically inclined, but also linked with this particular grouping before it was the merger with the Order of the Black Sun. However, this was not necessarily as ingrained as some people later claimed with the political structure of the following government after the government felt that they were currently under, in other words, the Third Reich compared to the republic that they were growing from. So those members that later formed those structures that were basically hanging out with those people numerous times, particularly the Hess person, had a particular inclination, interest in anything related to astrology or what you now consider perhaps the occult, correct?
Okay.
So therefore there were also many readings that also played a certain role with this individual's decision to fly to England during the war. As a side note, however, since the individual was freaked out about the Orsic's person's looks and sight during our process in the channeling, stated with aware from the vessels all concerned there was strange looks, perhaps when we're speaking through it in particular, we have somewhat of an understanding, but then again your entire species looks weird to us in all cases. So to us, this is just cosmetics, basically. But just as a curiosity, there was this particular interaction that apparently put quite some strain or some stress on this particular individual due to Orsic's eyes becoming white because her eyes were tilting back in her head the same way the vessel had tilting back occasionally during the process.
Okay. So, I mean, was she just a human being who was born in Croatia, or like did she have any extraterrestrial genetics or anything like that?
Well, obviously some people on the Earth has more extraterrestrial genetics than others, correct? In this case, yes, some are more IPRs that have more Earth DNA, whatever, right? If you want to attribute any meaning to that, it's up to you. Or this person was not necessarily seeded on Earth, if that's what you're referring to.
Okay. So she did verbally channel extraterrestrials like David's doing right now, or was it more just like automatic writing?
For what we're aware, she did both, but she started with automatic writing, and that's likely what was mainly used later on, and what she became, or rather her group became the most famous for, producing drawings that could be used in a technical manner. Antriebstechnische Werkstätten, that's the term we're aware from, right? Was the term that was used originally for this particular group after it was integrated in a military effort. Again, the term Vril Society or Vril Maidens or whatever was established after the war. That wasn't the term that was referred to them during their incarnation right there.
Okay. So did she and the other so-called Vril Maidens really grow their hair long to help them channel?
Again, they're not considered called Vril Maidens.
I know.
Yes, they did.
Okay, I mean, did it really help them, or was that just like a fashion statement, or what?
It was not a fashion statement. They were believed it would help them. We don't consider it necessary for such a process. Your Romero vessel doesn't currently have any longer hair, and Romero vessel also experimented, so we have to share here also for what we're aware from working with the vessel. With certain hair lengths, etc., and there's certainly not much of a difference in frequency, clarity, but they were certain of it. They certainly did grow their hair for this particular purpose.
Okay. So to me, it's not really clear whether, like, how much help she actually voluntarily gave to the Nazis. I mean, some people think like the Nazis just stole her work and either killed her or imprisoned her since they didn't allow, mysticism or any kind of secret societies or anything like that. So can you say what actually happened to her whenever the Nazis came to power?
Well, first and foremost, what we're aware, there was an occult branch, right? The Order of the Black Sun, which was very open towards mysticism. And obviously they're also the one that rather swallowed up the society and used them for their own purposes. So they were not executed since they were considered important for the war effort, right? However, there was certainly a clench down after the Hess person tried to fly to England, and some attributed this decision to his interaction with those particular women in this particular groupings, and others that gave him certain advice that later some considered to be the main problem. Also, there was the whole conflict about vegetarianism in this particular person, and obviously the conflict particularly with the Goebbels person and others that also later became a traitor's individual. One moment belonging to Waffle's mind for a name. The Bormann person, right, which was perhaps more what you consider today materialistic oriented. So there was this whole conflict between occultism and materialism in the main structure of this Reich. Or there's also the idea that everything after the war started was used for the war, and everything was threatening to the war effort. Everything was about the war. So everything was used to win the war, which we of course understand from our own vantage point. Or we would obviously have advised to use more of those psychic abilities to the degree that they did. Again, they're also grouping that something we're in from the vessel's mind now, so the idea that everything was included somewhat in the state organization. So many groups were banned simply because the government wanted to be in charge of everything. So some groups are simply forced to disband and then re-emerge under an official state-governed establishment, right?
Okay.
Everything was structured in terms of being under the state. So we would suggest in the terms of spiritual RFR, whatever, it was simply subsumized under the Order of the Black Sun, therefore used for war effort, including those particular females that were in this case useful under the label of Antriebstechnische Werkstätten for a technical enterprise then, which was then also used to design certain flying crafts you would today perhaps consider flying saucers, or obviously that's not what they themselves called them those particular objects, they were considered flying circles or something similar, right? And originally they were not flying with any high advanced technology, simply a propeller like an airplane, but later on they were able to use something like a frequency field, right?
Okay. Are you allowed to say who she was channeling?
Well, those particular beings we mentioned earlier from the Aldebaran system, and some beings you would consider perhaps today in Earth as well.
Okay. So what is Vril energy that she was taught about?
Again, as we mentioned, in other words, in Europe today, societies in India would be called prana, in China would be called chi, right? Or perhaps in ancient Greece would be called ether.
I mean, what is it? Is it like anti-gravity or something?
No, it's simply free energy. Again, those are all just words your scientists don't acknowledge because they don't want to accept the reality of such phenomena in the first place. From your modern Western society, there are much more labels other than Vril or ether. However, obviously it can be used for something like advanced propulsion. But again, it's not originally well, there was also another ritual or masculine character that was more inclined to voluntarily work with those forces to construct certain engines, not necessarily out of a logical conviction, but simply because there was money and research available if you would be willing to work with the government like it is currently in your own societal structure as well. The Schauberger person also played a larger role in the construction of such crafts.
Okay. So why did the people from Aldebaran or the Inner Earth, why did they want to share this technology or this information about this technology with her? I mean, was it kind of like they just wanted to help Germany develop, or were they specifically interested in helping like the Nazi party?
They are particularly interested in helping their offspring, right? Which is likely those individuals that are located overall in your larger northern western European hemisphere. And since this was a grouping that was very open about advancement in current culture, contemporary culture, there gave birth to numerous secret societies of such a nature, and they simply worked with whoever was open. And was also technologically going in the most advanced direction and was perhaps the most futuristic, right?
Okay.
But it's not like it didn't also work with others, or there was perhaps not as much openness to work with others. So is perhaps the Tesla person interested in moving to the United States, for example, and working there.
Okay, so were there offspring like the so-called Scandinavian Nordic genetic strain, like the so-called Aryans?
Oversimplified, yes. Also to some degree Celtic, right?
Okay.
You're perhaps familiar with the story of the Suas Danan, right? Irish mythological teachings, or this was also to large degree settlement from Atlantis, so much of this is simply retold numerous times and changed, or many of them were linked.
Okay.
And it was likely much what you consider perhaps today development aid.
Okay. So like what kind of flying saucers were built with the information she channeled? Was it the Haunebu type that you mentioned before?
Well, she certainly contributed. Her, again, those that eventually built those crafts, right, used numerous sources to construct them. So it's not like they ladies built any crafts. They just brought some blueprints and then they were changed and adjusted. And then, of course, there was discussions how to repulse those things in the first place. Again, because originally they were just propelled and not particularly useful perhaps compared to your modern helicopters.
Okay. Do you know what the Nazi bell was?
It was originally intended to be a time machine, was certainly malfunctioning. However, the original idea of the so-called Vril, or the Jenseitsflugmaschine, was indeed very similar. There was the intention not to travel in time or to other star systems, but to travel to the dead, right? Since many of those people originally thought they were communicating with the dead before they realized they were communicating with beings that are simply not physically present on your Earth plane. So the idea I want to construct a craft that might sound very far-fetched to you even by your ordinary fairy standards, but the original intention was to build a craft that could travel to the realm of the dead. Technically.
So who taught them how to build this? Was it channelings that Maria Orsic gave them?
Well, not necessarily the Orsic, but the general group, right? And was built upon this idea. That's where they got the idea from. However, they also had their own scientists who then came up how to manufacture such, and in the end it ended up being something different than what they intended to originally, but they prodded and probed like bigger scientists often do. The only difference is they tried to implement also some of those ideas that were considered woo-woo by your modern scientists today.
Okay, so what happened to the Nazi bell? Did they ever successfully experiment with it?
Well, we're certain if there was one of there's numerous that were built. They crashed it later on, but it's likely another one survived. Some perhaps got lost because they actually managed to travel somewhere else and not return. And very likely some of those are still hidden somewhere in mountainous regions, but mostly those are more the flying saucer crafts, as you would term those today. The bell that was constructed originally might also be the possession of your own country currently.
Okay, so did any of them actually travel through time?
Yes.
Do you know where any of them reappeared in time and what location?
Like to travel to the past, we aren't sure what location, but then remember timelines are also very malleable, so the past will be different once they're there, etc.
Okay. What's the deal with the flying saucer that crashed in the Black Forest in Germany in 1936? I mean, why did it crash and where was it from?
Well, there are numerous options. Once, some were actually experimenting with those crafts, but not necessarily the Vril Society, but being from your own planet that were experimenting with such crafts. But they actually also got those crafts from the outside. So it's likely this was one of the crafts that were visiting from a secret base on your planet. Now you consider perhaps inner Earth, whatever, but it's likely also base that was inhabited by beings from outside, etc. A certain force that exists on your planet. We're not allowed to share everything, however, a certain power structure in your world that has the possibility to communicate with beings outside there that already existed before those particular groupings in the area became aware of that, was likely crashed on purpose to give them also a head start.
Okay, so you're saying it was indeed reverse engineered by the Nazis?
Yes. Again, they used numerous sources such as the Vril, their own scientists, and then the reverse engineering to come up with their own design that you are now aware of under the label of Houdabu or Vril.
Okay. Were there any survivors in the ship?
We're unaware of that, no.
Okay, and you're saying it was basically humans that were in the ship from the inner Earth?
Well, oversimplified, yes. Again, there was a base that was located there, and those humans, however, depends what you consider humans.
Okay.
Humanoid, yes, hairless monkeys. Again, there are certain restrictions on what you can share.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess like the final question that I have on this whole Maria Orsic topic, like I was going to ask you if it would be possible for you to like exchange messages with her, but I mean, I know that like that's possibly that might be going into inter-reptilian politics if you even say whether she's still alive. But I mean, I don't know. Is there anything you can share about whether she would possibly speak through David? Is that too inter-reptilian?
It's not there's two inter-reptilians, but the fears was the vessel's own desire to not channel entities that are disincarnated, as where marriage is probably no longer alive currently.
Okay.
And there are humans from your own planet.
Okay.